Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. Today I am just going to do a brief show and tell of some World War II books. When I was in high school, I got a copy somehow of this book, Total War by Peter Calvo Coresi and Guy Wint, and tried reading it. You can get that actual edition for $4 now, including shipping. Not bad. I was not able to read the book. My reading skills were not very well honed back in the day. For 3 years now, I've been trying to work on that. And during the past 3 years, one of the things that has given me a lot of satisfaction, she's looking at me like I'm saying something important, has been to read books that were at one time or another on my TBR, or just books really that I had thought about wanting to read. Nothing was on my TBR, really. TBR is booktube lingo for to be read. Something, for example, like The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, a book I had seen and had thought about but never did read until last year. That same book, apparently it exists in 2 volumes, and there is a revised edition that came out sometime after I was in high school. And so for under $10, including the shipping, I have decided to order those books, and we shall see. It's a case of my ordering books perhaps with no intention to read them. I don't know anything about that particular history. It's not a book that I've heard about on BookTube. The reviews at Amazon seem to indicate that it's a pretty good book. I've never looked at World War II comprehensively. I think World War II was covered briefly in high school. I had the 1 year of history that was required as a summer school class, and our teacher mostly showed us films, so I probably saw some World War II movies to satisfy that requirement. Now, I have, over the course of my life, read a fair amount of what has become known as the Holocaust. So, Night by Eli Wiesel, I think. I don't particularly like this book or this author very much, but I hold on to it for sentimental purposes. It was my first introduction, at least my first literary introduction to the topic. And it is a searing memory. The way he lays out the initial approach to the camp. If you have never read anything like this, you will never forget it, I think. But it has not, what's she doing? It has not been one of my favorites. I think it's a novel. He called it a novel. It's not a true account. So he made things up, that sort of thing, which I think is allowable, but not one of my favorites. But I thought I should show you that to start. I want to talk a little bit before I go into. Well, let me show you another book about the Holocaust as it has become known that I read just a year or two ago. This Way for the Gas, Ladies and Gentlemen, by a man who worked at, I think it was Auschwitz. And it's a bit of a hodgepodge, various essays. The title essay is the best, and then the succeeding essays are of uneven quality, but it's very definitely a book that's worthwhile to look at. Now, just to bring up another couple of books, when I started my program of reading about 3 years ago now, I had found This Is a Man by Primo Levi in this beautiful folio edition in the neighborhood box. And so it was something I read just before I started logging all of my reading in a book. This is a translation by Stuart Wolf, and it has beautiful etchings. And it recounts his experiences in that camp, the camp of Auschwitz. And it turns out that Primo Levi wrote a sequel to it, and I ordered that. For a higher price than I would normally pay, I opted to go for the Folio Society edition. And so all total, I think the books were like $18 for the set. The one I ordered, I made sure it had a box. The one that I found in the neighborhood book box did not have a box. And of the two books by the author, I think that I preferred this one because it related information that was all new to me. In the course of my life, I've read things here and there about the concentration camps, the death camps. And so while this was a very good book, I don't remember it having a lot new, but the chaos across Europe after the camps had been liberated was a focal point of study that I had never even considered. So I really enjoyed that. And then the author wrote a third book in which he told anecdotes which he left out of those two books. And it did not exist in a Folio Society book. I got it in a cheap paperback copy. I can't recall what other things I have read about the Holocaust. I believe I read Terence Duprey's book, The Survivor, or something like that, but I really don't remember. And then beyond that, I don't know what I have read. But that is not my focal point with this video. Recently, I don't even remember the context, but I mentioned my book, Fascist Heart, and it was a book that I wrote in the year 2002 when it became evident that there was a huge tendency or movement toward fascism in the heart of this country, the United States. And so I wrote some poems about it. Now, the poems are responding to my previous book. I think it was my book immediately previous to this, titled Against Holy War. Yeah, so this is not a book that I would recommend for anybody as a starting point to my works. But in the course of that video, I mentioned that it was written very much under the influence of Jan Karski, an operative of the Polish underground during the war. He incidentally did see the death camps. He also saw the inside of the Warsaw Ghetto. His book, The Story of a Secret State, must have been something I was reading around 2002, or I was rereading at that time, because One of the poems makes mention of the man, possibly more than one. And it's, of all of the books relating to that time period, it probably is my favorite book. You may remember that a secret organization known by the name of Al-Qaeda, it was a name imposed upon an organization on the ground by the West, I believe, was much in the news. And this book gave a lot of insight into how terrorist organizations would work. Of course, the Polish underground was a terrorist organization in the eyes of Germany. And when you read it, you understand that not all of the organization's tactics, such as biological warfare, would be something that we would consider above board in our polite, effete drawing rooms. But be that as it may, little did I know that my mention of this book would prompt one of my viewers, who is now my agent P. Krabs, to order the book. And that agent is now reading the book, let me say, possibly in Paris. So this is the actual first edition, and I love this book so much. There's the contents. It had not at the time been reprinted, and then sometime more recently, I saw that it had been reprinted with further information added, so I picked it up. I don't really like this book because it has a cover that has sort of a slimy feel. If you were born of my generation, you might remember that some of these old porn magazines used to have covers that had kind of a dirty feel to them, and this cover does. And so I think I have read anything that was additional to the original book, but this remains my preferred edition. And P. Krabs has mentioned the Professor Borecki, and I thought I would read a little bit from the chapter featuring Borecki, if I can find a good place to start. I had no acquaintance with him before the war. There was, I can't, oh yeah, there was a sentence that I thought was brilliant, which the professor said to Karski: "Nowadays it is difficult to define what is and what is not rash." And this is one of Karski's first assignments with the underground. He's just beginning to learn about the secret organization. So I'm just looking for I'll just jump in. He extended a long, bony white hand. On the middle finger gleamed a signet ring of unusual design. He touched a spring on it with a finger of his left hand. The ruby lid snapped back, revealing a tiny compartment filled with white powder. I've read about devices like that in books about the Medicis and the Borgias, but I never expected to see one in Warsaw except in the movies. There is nothing at all surprising about it, he replied calmly. It simply proves that man remains unchanged. Similar needs dictate similar measures. There are always the hunted and the hunters, the ones that hate humanity and aim to rule the world. I can see that you have not been in underground work long. You are right. I got in only recently. I am proud of being in it, but I must confess, this kind of work does not exactly suit me. And what exactly does suit you? He inquired with benign irony. What did you want to do before the war? What was your occupation? I wanted to do scientific work. Demography and the history of diplomacy attracted me most. Although I did not succeed in completing my doctorate thesis, I still would prefer to devote my time to tranquil scientific studies. That's fine, he snapped. Just wait till they invent a rocket that will carry you to the moon. That's the place for tranquil scientific studies. God has not ordained that Poles should have tranquility. We have to stay at home in Europe, endure these vicissitudes, and fight for a peaceful and studious life in the future. God has placed us in a fearful spot. We are on the most troubled of continents between powerful and rapacious neighbors. We have been forced to fight for our very existence through the centuries. No sooner do we come into our own than we are attacked and despoiled. A curse seems to hover over Poland's destiny. But what can we do? We must fight if we want to exist. It is as if the Creator had purposely added to our woes by filling us with an ineradicable love of our country, our people, our soil, and our freedom. He seemed to be gazing at me with dislike and suspicion, as though I were, for the moment, the representative of Poland's enemies. And he goes on. This book is brilliant, and it provides a window into the resistance that is, again, indelible. So possibly I will read another bit from it in a second, but I want to show you some other books. As I say, I'm seriously thinking about reading the history of the war. Not anytime soon, but it has been in my mind since I was in high school, and I will have the book on my shelf, or the books. So I will seriously consider it because I have never read anything comprehensive. But what I have read has been things piecemeal. So my second favorite book would probably be the one about the White Rose Society, Shattering the German Night. Now, I first read this in a library copy, and it also has been updated, and were I to see the updated version in the thrift store, I would most definitely pick it up. I believe the text has not been altered, and it, like with the Karski, includes added material. The updated edition includes a an introduction by Studs Terkel, I believe, of Chicago fame, and it's very worth reading. And there is other documentary appendices, I believe. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's most definitely worth having. And I would have preferred that edition to this one. As I say, I read this at the library first, and when I decided that I had to own my own copy, I was given the choice of which one to go for, and I opted for the original that I had read, because for the reissue they changed the title and they made Sophie Scholl the focus, and so the title of the book is something about Sophie Scholl. That was for marketing purposes. A movie came out with that title as well. But I believe that this title is wonderful, and I would be pleased if a third edition would come out with all of the supplemental material and reverting the title to the original. It's just a wonderful book. So these have been very important to me. And then for first-person accounts, the other book, which has been important, because this is a history. I believe there is a first-person account about Sophie written by a cousin or a sister or an aunt or something, and I read that, but I did not particularly like it. I have that over there somewhere, but I didn't bring it out. But The Pianist, which was made into a movie by Roman Polanski, and I liked the movie when I saw it. I liked it enough to go and get the book. And now I really wonder if I would like the movie still if I saw it. Because when Polanski's movie retelling of the story of Oliver Twist came out, I saw that and hated it. I detested it. And so I wonder if his movie would hold up. But the book has held up. This is the book that the movie was based on, and I don't believe The Pianist was the original title either. The author was a composer, and it is a harrowing account of his experience hiding during the war. He was in I can't remember exactly. I remember very well his escape from the camp. He was walled in. I don't remember if it was the ghetto, and he escaped from the ghetto before it was liquidated. It must be that. He was on different work crews and so forth. Let's see what it says. On September 23, 1939, Vladislav Spilman played Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor live on the radio as shells exploded outside, so loudly that he couldn't hear his piano. And I believe that scene made it into the movie. It was the last live music broadcast from Warsaw. That day, a German bomb hit the station and Polish radio went off the air. Though he lost his entire family, Spilman survived in hiding. In the end, his life was saved by a German officer who heard him play the same Chopin nocturne on a piano found among the rubble. Written immediately after the war and suppressed for decades, The Pianist is a stunning testament to astonishing human endurance and healing through compassion. Yeah, so it was written right after the war, and this was as well. This was actually written before the end of the war, 1944, I believe it came out. Yeah, 1944, you can see that. So these two books have always sat side by side on my shelf, and this is off somewhere else because it's not a first-person story. Now, I've always sort of hoped that I would find another or other first-person narratives that were as moving as either of these, and I never have. A couple of years ago, I picked up this, which I had heard about for a long time, and read it. It is an interesting story, but it is not so much. It is not a memoir by her father, and it's not even her recounting his memoir per se. It's her memoir of her relationship with her father. He had her very late in life, and he never talked about the war. She did not know any of the matter, how he fared during that period. And then, quite by accident, she learned that there was a whole story which had been concealed from her. He remained in Berlin during the course of the war, and it was a very interesting story. And her story is interesting. It is just not what I was hoping for, but it's worth finding out about too. There's a Frank Novak who I think helped out. I should say that while I was looking at this book, I happened to see this beautiful photo that I clipped out from a Time magazine, I think, and for years, whenever I've wanted this photo, I haven't known where it is, and I found it here. So the caption says, "Burying the Past. Children play at a military graveyard northwest of Saigon that holds 10,000 Viet Cong soldiers." And I don't know if it was from Time or Newsweek. Here's the opposite side of it, Twilight of the Emperor by somebody named Joe Klein. But this is the photo. I will promptly forget that photo is in this book. And this is not a book that I go back to as frequently as I do Karski. Just the little bit that I've been reading of this, I would like to read it again before I die. That's a position occupied by the Divine Comedy of Dante, and I don't think any other book. So that tells you something. And then of the other books that I've recently read, this was very interesting, where Arndt really does a deep dive on Eichmann, and gets into a little bit of the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of the mass slaughter that the Germans perpetrated. So those are the remainder of my library. And then I have a couple of books which I have not read. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Skokie a year or so ago. When I go to museums, if I can, I like to buy a book. If they have books in the bookshop, I like to support museums in that way. And I got this one, which I have wanted to read since I picked it up. And I wish I had kept a receipt in here, because I don't know if I don't know when it was. I believe it was subsequent to the lifting of all of the COVID restrictions, but I wish I had kept the receipt. The only thing that has made me hold back is there's a segment of the population that reveres this book that seems a bit tawdry. That's the easiest way to say it. I think Jordan Peterson, who is a popular, I don't know, right-wing pundit or something, may have lauded this book, and then his followers took it up. So I'm not really sure, but people have told me it's a very good book. And so it is something that I would like to read. I really feel that I have no need to read anything more in my life about the Holocaust per se. However, if I do, the other book which I have on my docket is this book, said to be a classic, and I don't know anything more about it. I just don't know that it is something that I could bring myself to read, but it's a case of I wanted to have the book on hand. It's not something you're just going to come across. What does it say here? By the spring of 1945, the Second World War was drawing to a close in Europe. Allied troops were sweeping through Nazi Germany and discovering the atrocities of SS concentration camps. The first to be reached intact was Buchenwald in central Germany. American soldiers, struggling to make sense of the shocking scenes they witnessed inside, asked a group of former inmates to draft a report on the camp. It was led by Eugen Kogon, a German political prisoner who had been an inmate since 1939. The Theory and Practice of Hell is his classic account of life inside. Unlike many other books by survivors who published immediately after the war, The Theory and Practice of Hell is more than a personal account. It is a horrific examination of life and death inside a Nazi concentration camp, a brutal world of a state within a state, and a society without law. Kogon knew that the book would shock some readers and provide others with gruesome fascination, but he firmly believed that he had to show the camp in honest, unflinching detail. The result is a unique historical document, a complete picture of the society, morality, and politics that fueled the systematic murder of 6 million human beings. For many years, The Theory and Practice of Hell remained the seminal work on the concentration camps, particularly in Germany. Reissued with an introduction by Nikolaus Wachsmann, a leading Holocaust scholar, this important book now demands to be reread. I grew up under the shadow of the Second World War. In that I am not too distant from Brian at Bookish, a booktuber who has a new book out under the title of MacArthur's Bloody something. I will put a link to his channel and to his video where he talks about it. My mother's elder brothers both served. One was in the Coast Guard and one was in the Navy. One saw service on some of those islands that Brian's uncle did. Not the same islands, but I remember him showing to me photographs from what things looked like on those islands. Of course, as with most people, my first introduction to the liberation of the camps, even to the very existence of the camps, came through something that I saw on TV just quite by accident when I was fairly young. So reading it has been a later thing. I think the book by Wiesel was for a class, but I'm not sure which class. It may have been Bill Hill on Death and Dying, but I really don't know. It certainly wasn't from a history class. So I had thought perhaps I would read a little bit further from the book, but I've gone on long enough. I perhaps will make another video subsequently. My agent in Paris has not yet gotten to the part where the secret state is fleshed out in greater detail. And that is a part that I would like to read for your benefit. It's definitely a book worth your picking up. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.